we are a little over 3 weeks away from the federal election. Now, we've seen that the candidates are making their way across the country on the campaign trail. And joining me now is Brock University professor Stefaan Dolgert. Stefaan, thanks for joining us. But what have you been seeing the leaders promise that will resonate with voters?
Well, I think with Mark Carney, we can see, I think, that some of these initiatives that he's proposing with regard to the Build Canada housing initiative is, I think something that voters are going to welcome, since, we know that cost of living and also, housing availability and housing costs are really something that voters are very worried about. And, we've seen similar plans coming from the NDP and from the Conservatives. The Conservatives are a little bit less intense, or a little bit less in terms of what they're offering. That is the GST rebate on homes up to 1.3 million. But certainly, I think that's something that voters will also welcome. But the question is, how much of this really is going to impact voters' opinions when Trump and the tariffs are the things that really seem to be, on voters' minds, and that really seems to be a continuing problem for Poilievre's campaign in particular.
That said, do you think Canadians may be kind of getting Trumped out or tariffed out, and the leaders may want to pull back from the fighting Trump rhetoric?
It's a reasonable question. I think it doesn't seem to be that that's the way voters are thinking at the moment. Again, the parties are offering a variety of other initiatives that are not, strictly related to responding to Trump. But what we saw coming out of the White House last week with quote unquote Liberation Day, the announcements of all the tariffs across the world, and then of course specifically the tariffs coming in against Canadian steel and auto. I think that voters are really, truly concerned about that. And I think that has to be one of the big explanations for why Carney continues to do so well in the polling. In, I think, the latest Ipsos poll, he's now opened up a 12-point lead over the Conservatives.
Yeah, let's talk about those numbers. Liberals, as you mentioned, with a pretty good lead, Conservatives in second, and the others pretty far behind, actually. What does Poilievre really need to do to get back into this race?
Yeah, well, that's really the $64,000 question. I would say that his allies out west are not doing him any favors. So when people like Preston Manning and others are putting Western secession on the front burner, and really a threat of disunity for Canada, it's something that Poilievre responded to by saying, no, I don't agree with Manning, but really, that's the kind of thing that is going to make it even harder for him. Voters are already suspicious of kind of his ties to Trump, even if Trump has said that he doesn't really like Poilievre. Still, his policies, his approach have seemed very Trump-like.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor Stefaan Dolgert.
Thank you.